Welcome to the Grit Reapers, the No BS podcast for online entrepreneurs.
I'm Gail.
And I'm Candice, and we're here to cut through the crap and give you the real truth about what it really takes to be successful online.
Let's get down to business.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Grit Reapers and to a special episode of our show called The Human Side of Grit, where we host incredible people, everyday people who have had extraordinary and challenging experiences in their life and what they've done with those experiences and kind of how they've metabolized them and created things in their life from these experiences. So today it gives me great honor to introduce Itumeleng to our listeners. Welcome to our podcast, Itumeleng.
Well, thank you so much, Candice, for having me. I'm really, really grateful, and I'm so grateful to share the afternoon with both you and Gail. I'm so excited, and thank you so much for having me.
Oh, awesome stuff. So I know I've told Gail how I met you, but for our listeners, let me rather say I first heard Itumeleng speak at a Women of Courage day that was hosted last year. And her story was mind-boggling, which you'll share with our listeners. But more than the story, what struck me was what you have done in your life following what happened to you. And when Gail and I started the podcast, I said to her, at some point, we have to get Itumeleng on this podcast to share her story because she's the epitome of the human side of grit. So I'm going to hand the floor over to you, and maybe you can share with our listeners. I'm sure you're very used to sharing your story, but if you could share with our listeners what happened to you and what you've done with that experience in your life now as an adult.
Well, thank you so much again. And I'm so happy to share my story. So I got burned from a candle when I was 11 months old. I was sleeping on the bed, and then the candle then fell over and it caught my dress, and then it caught me, and it became a 70 degrees Celsius fire. And then my mom and her brothers were in the very next room, and then they just started smelling smoke. And then they found me burning on the bed. My mom then lifted me up from the bed, and then my right hand literally stayed behind. She rushed me to hospital wearing just a petticoat, underneath. And then I was there for 3 months. I was there for another 3 years. And in total, from 11 months until 15 years, I've had a total of 104 surgeries just to fix me up and make me look the way that I get today. So the burnt tragic was so bad that my brain scars were showing. I lost 4 fingers, on my left hand. My ears were completely burnt off. So the right ear that I have is man-made. My 4 little stompies on my left hand are also man-made. But I think life for me started when I was around 9 years old. And I was in class, and a fellow learner said to me, "Hey, you are so burnt, you look like a franchise meat." And I was like, "What do you even mean?" And that just crippled my self-esteem to a point where I then tried to commit suicide. And my very first suicide attempt, I was in grade 5, and I made like a cocktail. I took Handy Andy, I took Jig, I took Sunlight Liquid, and I took Domestos, and I just mixed them up and I drank. And then nothing happened to me. And then when I was around 15 years old, I then tried to commit suicide again with my late brother. And then that also didn't succeed. And then when I was in grade 11, I took 300 pills. I then wrote a note to my mom and I said, "Hi, mom. Thank you for your love. Thank you for your sacrifices, but I just don't want to be here." I then drank the 300 pills. And a couple of hours later, I woke up, in that very same bed with nothing but just the letter that I had written. I was so annoyed. I was like, why? Like, why didn't this happen? But then in 2007, when I was doing my matric year, um, I then met God, and I met God through a friend who had sort of like forced me to go to um like a church service, and I think my spiritual journey is what got me to where I am here today, because I learned in through that journey that actually every single thing that happens for a purpose, one. But two, I went through a very huge healing journey with God where God had to make me realize that, listen, my dear, you can do everything through
Mm.
me. There's nothing that you cannot do. I am the first and I am the last, and I'm the beginning and I am the end, and therefore I'm the one that created you. So please just get up and stop feeling sorry for yourself. You know, you have a purpose, and your purpose is to bring hope and healing to my children. And from that day on, my life has never been the same again.
Mm.
Ooh, sorry.
Oh,
Bless
oh,
me.
you
Ooh,
see,
bless me.
you're sneezing on the truth. Yeah.
And from that day, my life has never been the same again. Because from that day, I knew that there was a reason why I'm here, you know. And that's when I also learned through like different journeys, in my life. Like, for example, I became a brand ambassador for Dove Unilever.
Mm.
And during that project, that's when I realized that a lot of people have got scars within them, and and then my purpose sort of like dawned on me, that what, that my scars, they are more external, but every single person has got a scar within, you know um and therefore, because of that, I'm here to help people through their own scars and help them to become better people, in life. And yeah, that is my purpose. That is the reason why I wake up each and every single day. But before that, I went to varsity, graduated as a BA audiovisual communications degree. And then after that, then I started working in the media industry. And I worked for a channel called One Gospel. I worked for the SABC for a while for shows like Friends Like These, Making Moves, Yo TV, and so forth. And then I then moved to radio, and then I became a content producer on radio for 4 years, for two different shows. And from that moment on, that's when my husband, who was my boyfriend at the time, said to me that, what, let's start a foundation called the Itumeleng Seku Foundation. And when we did that, it was primarily just to bring hope and healing to people, and sort of like get from the media and come down to people, so that people can have that access to have like real conversations with me, to say that actually what happened. Actually, are there times where you feel like you can't wake up? Actually, how else do you wake up and you're so bubbly and you're so vibrant every single day? And I think those are real questions that people always want to ask, but they don't know how to. And I
Mm,
think when you're just and I think when you're like just behind the camera, or you are like behind the mic, then it's more difficult for people to sort of like get to know you
mm,
personally. Um, and, and yeah, that was the reason for us starting the foundation. At the time, we ended up adopting 250 schools, motivating young kids on purpose, but as well as on self-esteem. And there's nothing as more rewarding as meeting somebody in the mall and they're like, you know what, 7 years ago you came to my school and you have like changed my lives.
mm,
Like we get
Amazing.
so many testimonies from like people who are now like professionals, and they're like, you know what, you changed my life 6 years ago when I was in grade 11, and you came and you poured your heart out. You know what I mean? And I
mm,
think for me, that is the reason when God said hope and healing, that is what he was talking about. To say that, you know what, if people can see you smile, then people can look at themselves and say, if she's smiling, then what is stopping me from smiling? Yeah.
Yeah. Itumeleng, sorry, what was the name of your foundation? I didn't catch it.
The Itumeleng Seku Foundation.
Okay, that's amazing. That is amazing. I can imagine how amazing it is when somebody comes up to you and says to you, and you don't even know that you touched them, and they come up to you and they're like, it actually just gives me goosebumps.
It's just like such a rewarding thing. And I think that is what helps us to also just keep on going, because we know now that we're making such a huge difference, in people's lives. And I think that is all that matters, in life. I never knew that my story could help people get out of their own um deep pits, in their lives. And I think the moment that I realized that that was the case, I knew that I had a bigger journey and a bigger life purpose than most people, because for me it's so important to keep on sharing my story, because when one new person hears it, they feel like, you know what, if she is reaching her full potential with only one hand and with only one finger, then what is stopping me from reaching my full potential? And I think that is what God birthed us for. You know what I mean? He brought us, into this world for us to fulfill and for us to live the lives that he has meant for us to live, you know. And I think the moment we tap, into that purpose, that your life just it's just so fulfilling.
mm,
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Yeah.
I guess, sorry, Kans, I was just going to say, I guess in business, just bringing it back to business, because, I so often I see parallels between our human side of grit and our business. I guess what you're talking about when you talk about, your purpose is what every business owner needs to think about, like their North Star. Like, what is it? Why is this business even running? Why are you running this business? What is your North Star? And I think so often we lose sight of that. You get into the everyday busyness of it and you often lose sight of it. And I think it's a very good reminder that you've just given us, yeah, about why you're doing what you're doing.
mm, mm. And I mean, I think also what you said that like struck a chord with me, like just before we started recording our episode, we were just chatting a little bit, and I was saying, yeah, this podcast is because we wanted to create something that would speak about the stuff everyone's thinking, but not everyone is saying. And your foundation, you said it was like to talk about the real stuff, like the stuff that people are scared to ask, but actually, like, they are important conversations to be having. So clearly we are all three of us in the habit of having difficult conversations or talking about the hard stuff, you know. The best part though, Itumeleng, can
We have
you share with our
to have,
listeners? Sorry, did you want to say something?
I was saying that we have to have the hard conversations because if we don't, then a lot of people, the reason why they stay in depression and like mental health problems is because they think that they are the only ones going through those things.
Yeah.
And I think the moment that you are able to say, no, I can relate to that, I know exactly what you're talking about. Actually, you see me here smiling each and every single day. There are days when I just cannot get out of bed. And I think when people hear such things from us, the so-called strong ones, then they get to a point where they realize that, oh my goodness, I'm normal, you know what I mean? And this is okay. And I'm allowed to sit in bed sometimes and not even feel bad about it. And I
Mm,
think for me, it took me growing up and maturing to get to a point where you actually realize that, hey, actually, you need to be okay for you to be able to be there for the world. You know what I mean?
mm,
So if there are days when, like, you can't get out of bed, don't get out of bed that day. You know what I mean? And allow yourself, listen to your body, listen to your mind, so that the next day that you're able to get up and grind and be there for the world. But you cannot, there is, I've never met any person who can say to me that they are 100% energetic every single day
mm,
and life is just like, oh my God, go, 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 go.
mm.
There is no such thing. And I think, even God says that on the seventh day, you need to rest. You know what I mean? Like we all need to rest. And that can be any day for you. It can be on a Monday, it can be on a Tuesday, it can be on a Wednesday, but you have to choose a day where you just rest and you just shut out the noise and you're like, you know what? Today is for me. You know what I mean? But we
Oh
have
yeah.
to have these types of conversations because if we don't, then people feel like, oh my God, I'm slacking or I'm not doing enough. You know what I mean? Like people just walk in so much guilt and they allow themselves to feel like they can never ever be enough. And I'm like, no, actually, that is just normal. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But those are the type of things that we need to be talking about because before, when I was younger, I always had this thing that, oh my goodness, no, life is perfect, we great, yes, da, da, da. And I was like, no, actually, that's not the reality. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think it also comes with age as well, that the older you become, the more realistic you are with certain things,
Mm,
and you allow yourself to live your life in the pace that you need to live your life. Of course, that doesn't mean that you need to like sleep in bed for the whole week. You know what I mean? That's a different situation. Then you really need to go and talk to a therapist. But what I'm saying is that there will be days when like you're just like, you know what, today I just want to shut the world out, and that is okay. You know
yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
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 Exactly. Yeah.
Oh my God. Hallelujah. I was thinking, Gail.
Gail, we needed to hear that. Gail, we did.
You're allowed to take a day for yourself. But
Oh dear.
okay, so now Itumeleng, can you share with our listeners what it is that you do now?
So I am an entrepreneur. Um, so in 2017, it just dawned on me to start making candles, you know. And it was like years ago, actually, even way before like 2017. I always knew that I had to face that phobia, you know, at some point, in my life, because I I was the type of person who was afraid of anything that was hot. So if it's like a
Mm,
gas heater, I was scared of that. Gas anything, I was scared of that. Candles, I was scared of that. Anything that is like fire and everything, I just stayed away from. So in 2017, I then came across a video on YouTube of a person who was making candles. And I was like, I I've always known that I've had to do it, at some point. But for me, doing it in that moment, it was never like a business, idea or like something like that. For me, it was more of like a personal journey thing to
Mm-hmm.
say that I need to, at some point, do this so that my inner child can feel like, you know what, we have now overcome. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, and and that day I then wrote down the stuff that I needed to make the candles. And the next day there I started the car and I went and I bought all of these things and I started making the candles. And I got so much peace. And so I felt so tranquil in that moment that I just felt like, why am I feeling this way? Of course, it was also quite teary for me, because for me it was just like, oh my God, like I'm facing the demon that sort of like changed my life, right? Um, but I made them and then I took pictures and then I put them on Facebook. And I don't know if people were being friendly or not, but they were like, oh my God, are you selling those? They are beautiful. We love them. We want them. And I was like, nope, no ways. I'm not selling these things. you know, I was just making them because, yeah, like I was just trying to sort of like um get over this phobia. I then started making candles for a while, but not to sell. It was sort of like a journey for me. For me, it was part of the healing journey that I was still going through in that moment. So I was still motivating and I was doing everything else but doing the candles. It's like a business thing. So during COVID, we were working a lot with the Angel Network, and we were supplying food parcels for them, and so forth. And then my husband then came across a video of a lady who had a very successful business in candles. So then he showed it to me, and then he said to me, remember, you were actually making candles. And I was like, yeah, honey, not everything needs to be, awakened. You know what I mean? Like, you just let that demon sleep type of thing. It's okay. Like, we did it and we got over it. And I can now switch on a candle. So, it's fine. And then he said, and for some reason, I couldn't sleep from that day on. I just knew that, you know what? I just have to start making candles again. And I started making candles again, not to sell, but again, part of my own like personal journey. And people just started bugging me for these candles. And they were like, listen, I want to buy a candle. How much is a candle? And I'm like, no, I'm not selling these candles. But anyway, fast forward, it's now, honestly speaking, such a beautiful and such a successful business. And I think for me, getting to bring hope and healing into people's homes through scents, because also the scents that we use in our candles, diffusers, room sprays are scents that are healing. So we don't just choose any fragrance because it smells nice. So every single scent that we have is there to do something. You know what I mean? So like a cinnamon vanilla, for example, that's very good with like stress. So cinnamon vanilla just knows exactly how to locate every single stress muscle, and it just knows exactly how to calm you down. You know what I mean? Um, Lemongrass, for example, is great for just like uplifting you. You know what I mean? So when you're feeling down, it just knows exactly how to just like make you feel better. And then now all of a sudden you're like, hi, away, darling. Meanwhile, it's just the lemongrass that we have used. You know what I mean? So like every single scent that we use is there for a certain purpose. And those are the scents that we use for our clients. Again, going back again to that hope and healing, that whenever you have our candles, our fragrances, in your house, that you can feel the difference, you know what I mean, in your mood, in your calmness, the way that you relate to yourself, even, and therefore the way that you relate to like other people. So our candles and our diffusers and our room sprays are more there to improve your life rather than just to make your house smell amazing.
Mm, mm,
Wow,
Yeah, so
I can't believe that. I cannot believe
mm.
that. That is just like so meta. Is that the right way of using it? It's so meta to now
Yeah,
have a candle business. I
yeah.
mean, amazing.
Yeah.
yeah, so
And
now
I always tell her I'm like a raving lunatic, like if I like something, I'm gonna go hard on it, And I can tell you all, I'm obsessed, like obsessed with my French pear diffuser and I think I got the lemon gingergrass candle. It's like they are just unbelievable. So we will link everything if anyone is interested in getting one or 10 or whatever it is. But I think honestly, Itumeleng, like you have got the most radiant personality. Like I've met you in person,
yeah,
you just like exude love. Like there's actually no other word for it. I can't expect, we're not good friends. We haven't known each other our whole lives, but like whenever I see you, I just get this huge smile on my face because you've got like such a magnetic and loving energy about you. And like Gail, it was mind blowing to me when I heard you speak for the first time that the thing that took so much from you is now the thing that is giving so much to you. It is absolutely like boom, like
yeah.
just amazing and so inspiring and so happy to have had you on our podcast to share your hope and healing with us. And it's just a phenomenal, phenomenal story. But you are a phenomenal, phenomenal woman.
Thank you so much. I really, really, really appreciate that. And I think for me, honestly, it took me a lot for me to get here, and that's why I always speak about the healing journey. I mean, like when I launched the book, I sort of felt like that was the last stamp to my healing. And then the candles then came through, and that still like started it all
Yeah.
over again. And I always say that healing is not a destination, it's a journey. Um, but when you can embrace the journey, that's when you get to a point where you really, really start healing. And I think for me to even get to the point that I am now and to be able to exude that love, like you're saying, it's because I've had to go through it. I've had to start loving me again. I've had to start seeing me again. And I think everything starts with in, you know what I mean? Everything starts with self. And once you can get to a point where you start loving yourself the way that you need to, then you're able to see and feel and love other people. But it
Mm,
all starts with self. But for me, it wasn't just a thing that happened. It was a long
mm,
journey that
mm.
I was forced to go into because I hated myself for the longest. I resented how I looked like. I felt like I was a ghost. I felt like I didn't belong here. And I had to go through all of that for me to get to a point where I am now, where I'm able to even call people gorgeous because I feel like every single person needs to hear that. Every single person needs to hear that, hey, I'm beautiful. You are absolutely gorgeous. And me calling people gorgeous comes from that. It comes from me being wanted to be called gorgeous and not even seeing myself, as like a gorgeous girl.
Mm,
And that is why I'm so intentional with like calling people gorgeous, with calling people beautiful, with saying, hey, you're beautiful. How are you doing, gorgeous? You know what I mean? Just to remind people that, you know what, you are an amazing human being. And I think it has to come from a point where I know exactly what I'm talking about. You know what I
yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
So when I'm calling you gorgeous, it comes from a deeper place for me
Mm,
because I've had to take it through within me to say that, hey, I need to find that gorgeousness. You know what I mean? So I think I'd love to leave your listeners with this. And it's a quote by Lao Tzu. And I really, really love this quote because it's just such a powerful one. And Lao Tzu says, mastering others, that is called strength, but mastering yourself, now that is called true power. And I think once you found your true power, you become unstoppable. The world moves for you. The world just shakes for you because it's like we've been waiting for such a force, but it comes from a point of getting to know who you are and finding your true power.
mm,
Wow, I can just
yeah.
see. I mean, we're sitting on Zoom and I can just feel it. And we're not even in the same room, I can just feel your passion and
Mm.
yeah, you just talking about that journey. I can feel not that I could ever understand what did you say, 104 surgeries?
104, yeah.
Not that I could ever imagine what that must feel like, but I can feel the depths of your journey just when you talk
Mm,
about it like that.
mm,
Wow.
yeah. Thank you so much, Itumeleng. We will link everything about this gorgeous woman in our notes and on our website. If anyone wants to get hold of you or look at your products, we will link all of that. Thank you so much for giving of your time and for being vulnerable and sharing your story with us and our listeners, Itumeleng. And I'm so lucky because I get to see you on Friday.
Yes, I can't wait. Thank you so
Me
much
too.
for having me.
Okay.
Amazing.
Appreciate it.